Hello, everyone, and welcome to the stream. This is Sharing with Shellshock. I am your host, ShellshockPrime, and this is episode 27 of Sharing with Shellshock. And this is all about the NES, the Nintendo Entertainment System, the gaming renaissance. This is the episode. Joining me are two guests who have been on this show before. We got Zenspath.
How's it going?
And we got McPatches 3D.
Hello.
Good to see you both again. It's good to have the both of you back.
Yep.
It's good to be back.
Yep.
Always fun.
Yeah, so tonight we're going to talk about the NES. So this is going to be the first in a series of episodes where I'm going to be talking about video game consoles that I've owned, and what better way to start with the first one I've ever owned as a kid, growing up, the Nintendo Entertainment System. And so we got Zenspath. Since you've been on the show multiple times, could you tell us what type of content do you do?
I'm the host of the Zenspath Entertainment Network. That is our podcast and series of streams and stuff that we do over at Zenspath.com. I'm an electronics engineer by trade, so I tend to work on fixing a lot of these old systems and things like that. But otherwise, just love talking games.
Yep, sounds good. And McPatches, remind everybody what you do.
I stream and I know things.
Yep.
I'm just a big dorky guy. I play a lot of video games on my stream. Lately, it's been really horror-centric. Even before October, I was starting back in September. I've just been on a big horror kick in general in my life. Mm-hmm. But I play a lot of RPGs and like Souls-likes, roguelikes. I'm starting to inch my way into actually getting into other content, but I haven't pulled the big trigger yet.
All right.
So, yeah.
All right, that's absolutely fine. That's fair. All right. So, for the NES, the NES has been around since 1985 in North America, but 1983 in Japan as the Famicom, or Family Computer, as what it was originally called, and Nintendo released it back then, and it was a huge success. And then when they brought it over here, we were coming out of a video game crash of '83, which we're going to talk more about that later on. But the NES definitely influenced a lot in gaming, and we will be talking about that. But first, we're going to start off with how we each got into it. So, when did you first get an NES, and what were your earliest memories of it? Starting with you, Zenspath.
Well, I'm the old man in this group, so I had mine new back in '85, or right around that time when it started coming out.
Yeah,
I remember it was the Super Mario Brothers and Duck Hunt edition. So it's not the original. Like, I didn't have Rob the Robot originally, but I got it in those earlier years. And I remember my parents talking about like, oh, we'll get this video game thing. We don't know if anyone's going to use it. And then I'm fighting with my dad and my grandfather the entire day because they keep playing Duck Hunt, and I just want to play Super Mario Brothers.
Yep.
Oh man, good times.
Yeah. What about you, McPatches?
For me, it's a little fuzzy. It was my first system when I was young. I was born '90, so it was already 5 years old when I was born. But I remember like my earliest memories going to like family members' houses and like my parents' like friends and stuff, and playing the NES there and playing Mario. And then I think they ended up getting me one. And then when mine broke, my grandma handed me down hers when she got the SNES. Mm-hmm. So I got like a ton of games. And then it was a great time. I remember when I first like packed it up, I had like 2 or 3 Rosars bags full of games.
Yeah.
And only a few duplicates.
Yeah.
Nice.
So for me, the way everything began was though I remember like my older brother, he had an NES. He would bring it over whenever he would come and visit back when I was a little baby, but it wasn't until 1990 I was like 3 turning 4 around this time, and my older brother got us an NES because he would bring it in. He would bring it over all the time, but he decided to just bring one over so that we as a family could have one, and which led to it mostly being used by me, and then my younger brother would use it now and then. But I remember like the first game that I got was the double pack of Super Mario Brothers and Duck Hunt. We never had Rob the Robot, but we had the Zapper. We had the NES with 2 controllers. We would play Super Mario Brothers a lot. I remember playing Donkey Kong because we had Donkey Kong Classics that had both the first game and Donkey Kong Jr. in the cartridge. We had like a lot of other games. And my earliest memories were basically just my family just getting together just to play the NES with us all the time, and it was a lot of fun because I've played so many great NES games over the years, and some games with the family. Even though outside of maybe like a few members of my family, most of my family are not into video games. They're not gamers or anything. They were just playing it because like it was just there, something for everyone to do, just to distract themselves from whatever it was that they were doing at home, and it was a good time. That's all I can really remember. But the NES, so the fact that I've been pretty much playing video games for the past 33 years now, and all because of this console, like it's just absolutely amazing. But yeah, so now we'll go on to the next topic right here, which will be what are your favorite NES games of all time, and can you name one game that you think is the worst NES game of all time? We'll go with you, McPatches, for this one.
The best of all time for NES, I think Super Mario Bros. 3 is one of the best games. Like that was my jam. I liked a lot of games, but I played that game a lot as a kid. As far as the worst, I feel like my memory is not the best for it anymore. I can't remember any of the really bad games that I played really back then.
Yeah.
And now when I revisit, it's only the games that I'm like nostalgic for. It's been like 30 years.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Oh man. I don't know. There was definitely some clunky games I played, or things that, especially when I was little, I couldn't really understand. I'm sure if I went back to them now, it'd be a lot easier. Maybe. There's, with the caveat that there's probably still a lot of those that were just bad.
Oh yeah.
I remember one that had like, I feel like it had like a sun with a face on it on the cover. I could never figure out how to play it, but I had it, and I can't remember what it was called.
It had a sun with a face on it. I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, I'm like looking through my list, like, what is this?
I could be like misremembering. It could have been just like some kind of like sun design kind of thing, and then combined with like that like 90s imagery of like decorations that had the sun with the face on it.
I'm gonna have to hunt that down now and figure that one out.
I want to say it was like Taboo, or not Taboo, like
Taboo. That wasn't even really a game. That was the one that would like tell your fortune and all that. It was just
it was Taboo.
Yeah,
okay.
I remember that one.
Yeah, I had no clue what I was doing with that. So
God, that would be a terrible
that
game
was
to
the
give to a
worst game.
child. Like, what is this?
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, I don't think I remember Taboo. I don't think I've ever played that game.
Good, keep it that way.
Yeah.
there we go. There's the worst game.
All right, so there we go. That is the worst game. Now Zenspath, it's up to you to tell us which games.
So the general answer he took was Super Mario Brothers 3 for everything. But I think if I had to choose one as a representative for the NES, I would go to Kirby's Adventure, because that game, very late in the life, was a technical marvel that should not have been doing half of what it was doing.
Yep.
But I remember getting that one, sitting down, and I used to play with my little brother all the time. And to this day, my daughter is now a Kirby fanatic, and she continues to play it all the time. As for the worst one, do you guys ever remember a game called Orb 3D? You had to use the Power Glove to try and catch and throw a ball, in 3D space, and combined with that peripheral and that system or that game, it was just so bad.
Oh man, the first image when I googled it is like this little pixel demon monster, and like one of his eyes is like hanging closed.
Yeah, it was.
Oh,
It was such a
great.
bad one. But I mean, because that was one of the 3D ones. That might not be the one I'm thinking of. I think that might have been the one with the power glove. There was one that you would use the power glove to throw stuff, but oh god, I just remember
I wanted
that
the
being
power glove so
terrible.
bad,
I know.
all because of the wizard.
Yeah, I know what game you're talking about, Zenspath.
Yeah.
Super Glove Ball.
Glove ball. Thank you. Why did I keep thinking orb? I was looking at the list and I was like, yeah, I think that was the one, but yeah, glove ball was the bad one.
Yeah.
Apologies.
Yeah. So NES. Yeah. So for me, like, I'm going to name a couple of games that I would say, like, of the ones I remember playing, plus also some games I played later on. The not counting Super Mario Bros. 3, because I could go on and on with that game, because that game is absolutely, like, to me, the best NES game. But I'm going to go with Mega Man 2. I know Mega Man 2, for me, of all the Mega Man games, that's the one I go back to the most on the NES. I could just replay that game, and I could beat that at least within, like, an hour to an hour and 15 minutes. And I do what I can to get everything, all the weapons, get some E-tanks, make sure to get to Dr. Wily's stage. And I'd say, like, the worst thing about that game is there is a level in one of the Wily stages where like the boss fight, the only weapon that you can use to beat the boss fight is if you have the crash bomber. You have to use that because there would be like these, like, there's a certain type of enemy that's on the wall. You have to get rid of each and every one of them, but they also have some, like, traps where, like, you will waste your you will waste your crash bomber because you have a limited amount to use, and then if you die, then you have to do it again. It was the worst part about that game. Otherwise, everything else about that game was fantastic. Castlevania 3, Dracula's Curse is another good game. That one, I felt like they took what they had for Castlevania 1 and they made it better, but they also made it a lot harder. So hard to the point where when you go all the way to Dracula's castle, and when you lose to Dracula, you go back to the second half of the final stage rather than being right in front of Dracula's castle itself. That one was a hard boss fight. Unfortunately for me, like, since I played it on the Castlevania collection that's on Switch, and I ended up just using save states to beat it because it was that hard.
No shame.
I used the Game Genie, so
Yeah. Oh man, Game Genie. That was a throwback right there. Castlevania 2 is definitely not the best, but not the worst. But it's definitely a interesting game. The only other games I'm probably gonna mention in terms of the best on NES, like you already mentioned Kirby. That, like, easily one of the best looking games on the NES. It has no business looking that good, but it does. I'm probably gonna also have to mention Ninja Gaiden.
Ninja Gaiden's amazing.
Yeah, Ninja Gaiden 1 and 2 are like one and 2 for sure. 3, I never finished that one, but 1 and 2, yeah, definitely.
I recently was playing it on the Switch because I was like, I have been really wanting to play this, and I remember playing it as a kid, and like I must have, like, maintained some of the muscle memory over the years somehow, because, like, I was, like, breezing through for quite a while. I was like, wow, I'm doing a lot better than I thought I would. It's either that or it's just playing, like, all the Metroidvanias recently.
Yeah.
In the last, like, year. They've kind of trained my brain.
Yeah. And the only other game that I'm going to mention in terms of the best on the NES, I'm gonna have to go with DuckTales. DuckTales is great. I had a lot of fun with it. Sure, like certain aspects of the game can be very cheap, but I honestly thought it was a good time. And the moon theme, like, need I say more?
Capcom was just at a peak on the NES, I think, for a lot of their stuff, especially their licensed games.
They were.
There's a lot of music that goes way harder than it should on the NES.
They do,
like,
yeah.
Like Final Fantasy 1 and 2 have good music, but like 3, when you actually hear the actual NES music, it's amazing that they could do that with the NES sound cards.
Yeah.
Like it was, and then like you mentioned, DuckTales, Mega Man, Castlevania. There's a lot of really good music on the NES.
Even some bad games have really good music. Like, for example, Silver Surfer on the NES, bad game, but the music is phenomenal. Some of the best on the NES, and it just keeps going.
That one's so difficult.
Also, there was also another NES game that you wouldn't really think anything of it once you first like play it, but the music just absolutely steals the show, and that's Pictionary for the NES. Like, you wouldn't think anything of it, but low key, one of the NES games that have some great music you would never expect to even hear at all. Shatterhand's another one. But
another game I really enjoyed. I don't remember the music, so I don't remember if it had good music. But I really enjoyed playing Gauntlet on the NES.
Ooh, Gauntlet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did play a lot of Gauntlet back then.
It was a fun, like, arcadey game. I like the more modern versions of the game. Like when I go to the arcade playing Dark Legacy on it, but playing the original on the NES just has that nostalgia.
Yeah,
I think I had more of Gauntlet 2 is what I would play all the time.
Yeah, because I think there were two versions of Gauntlet. One that was from Tengen, and then another one was published by a different company. Which
I'm not sure which one from my memory. It's so unfortunately, my NES games all got stolen by my aunt's ex-husband. So I don't have my original console or games anymore. I only have a handful of games that I've picked up since then. But yeah,
I'm sorry to hear that.
It's one of those things, like, I've grieved it and lost it, but she's not with him anymore. Hasn't been for years. He's a shithead. So.
Yeah. For me, it was like I left, like when we were moving, we ended up just leaving our NES collection behind. I used to think that my dad threw them away, but no. My brother told me he didn't do that. We just left it behind, and it's a regret. Though I've recently bought back some of the games. Oh, Contra's another one that I used to have. That's another good game on the NES. But I'm rebuying like some of the games I had, except for the really bad ones. But there's like, I mainly had like, there were 3 bad games that I remember having. I had the Karate Kid for the NES. It's one of the 2 LJN games I own. The other one, which is a much
LJN.
Yeah, LJN. Oh my god. They made so many bad licensed games on the NES, but
I keep remembering the Wolverine.
Oh, the Wolverine. But there was one game that they released that I also own, which to me, like, the movie it's based on is one of the greatest movies of all time, and it's the only one where it's the only time you're ever going to see Bugs Bunny and Mickey Mouse together in the same movie. Who Framed Roger Rabbit? The NES game is awful. Even I think that was like the first game as a kid that I probably thought that was really bad. And what I found out years later is that the company that was contracted to make Who Framed Roger Rabbit for LJN was actually Rare. Yeah. Yep, the same Rare that worked on Banjo-Kazooie, the Donkey Kong Country games, they worked on Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and the composer was David Wise, same composer as Donkey Kong Country games. He composed it, and the only music that came from the movie was actually Jessica Rabbit's theme, which plays throughout most of the game. I've never beaten the game, and it's just not good. Like, I don't even know exactly what you're supposed to do, who you're supposed to talk to. You have to find clues. You have to find like different items, and you have to deliver. You also have to, I think you have to fight people. I know like there was like a final boss fight against Judge Doom. And the overworld, they have like an overworld section where you're basically playing as Eddie Valiant, and you have Roger Rabbit following you. Sometimes the weasels will like stop you, and you have to either answer a question or find a punchline to a joke that they have. And if you get it, you're freed. If not, you lose a life. But there are some times where there would be some sort of wall in the game where you need to have explosives, and it has the best effect ever where like once you use like the dynamite to explode, the wall just bounces off the screen. Like, why even have that in the first place? That game is absolutely bad. And I could not finish that game at all. I couldn't understand it. I don't know why that was even made in the first place. But another fun fact, so the Karate Kid NES game, guess who LGN contracted? Atlas of Shin Megami Tensei and Persona fame. The fledgling Atlas at the time they were like still a relatively new company, but they worked on the Karate Kid for the NES. And
it is funny how many great companies now made really bad games. Like,
yeah, they got to start somewhere.
Exactly.
Generations back. Yeah, and developing was like way different back then too.
Yeah, and but there's one other game that I had that was really bad. It was not from LGN. It was actually from another company called High Tech, who made some really bad games too. This one was called Muppet Adventure: Chaos of the Carnival. I hate this game so much. So the point of the game is Miss Piggy has been kidnapped, and you have multiple characters to choose from, and they have a different game assigned to them. There's one with Fozzie. He has a maze. There was like I believe Gonzo had some sort of a space adventure. I forgot exactly what Animal had. But Kermit, he had to do river riding, and you have to find keys in order to clear the level. Once you find 4 keys, you get to go to a castle as Kermit, and what happened next is that the only way to beat the final boss is by using a feather to tickle them. And that game is really bad. And it was a birthday gift one year, and I absolutely did not like this game. And then, luckily for me, one of my uncles ended up giving me Mega Man 3 like not long afterwards, so I was happy about that. Mega Man 3 is like a much better game. Oh wow! But I do want to bring up a game that people say is pretty bad on NES, but I don't think it's terrible. But I think that it's just okay. The problem is it's too glitchy. It has a lot of flaws. The very first Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game for the NES, where you have the swimming level, that game, it's really not bad, but the best character in that game is Donatello. Like,
oh yeah, because the reach with the pole.
Leonardo's okay, but Raphael and Michelangelo are not good in that game at all. And in the swimming level, it's best to use either one of those characters because they're otherwise not good anywhere else in the game. So, like, each turtle is basically one life. Then you can lose lives, but at some point you'll find, like, any of the turtles, and then you'll be able to rescue them. They'll be back in your party. There's a couple levels in the game, like it's like a mishmash of the original comics with the show. Like Bebop and Rocksteady are in the game, but there's no Krang. Most of the villains from the TV show were not in this game. Shredder is the final boss. There is a level where you have to fight you have to fight the Technodrome, and then afterwards you go into the Technodrome, which is the last level of the game, and then you fight Shredder after you go through like the entire Technodrome itself, and afterwards the game is over. It's not bad, not terrible. I'd say it was just about average for what it was, like for NES. But
I think a lot of it's just the hatred for the water level.
yeah,
It's such good music, though.
but the majority of the people who hated the game never actually got past the water level.
Yeah.
But
The dam.
but the thing about this game is, outside of Japan, this is the best-selling NES game that was not made by Nintendo. Because the turtles were like really popular around this time, so Turtle Mania was just too big to ignore. Like, people were just getting this game, but it's not bad. But in Japan, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say go ahead.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. I was gonna say, in Japan, the best-selling game on the NES is Dragon Quest 3. Dragon Quest 3 is the best-selling game in Japan, but North America and Europe, Ninja Turtles.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I know that Dragon Quest is like huge in Japan, like pretty much a country like holiday when a game releases, because so many people in the past have skipped work and school and stuff to play Dragon Quest, so they just like, we'll just take, nobody works today, everybody go home, play some Dragon Quest, kill them slimes.
They made it so that they made it so that they had to have a law where you can't release the game on weekdays. It has to be on a Saturday or Sunday or on a holiday. But and the Dragon Quest outside Japan used to be known as Dragon Warrior, because for a time Enix did not have the trademark to use Dragon Quest outside Japan, so they named it Dragon Warrior. And I think they had Nintendo help them out with the publishing the first game here. And
they did.
They made way too many copies. The game did not do well here, so
they gave it away with the Nintendo Power, didn't they?
Yeah, they had to give it away with Nintendo Power to like customers, which cool. But Dragon Quest, even to this day, while it's doing better now, still not as popular as it is in Japan.
Yeah,
but
I'm excited for the new Dragon Quest Monsters game.
Yeah,
hopefully it's good. It feels, from what they've shown and talked about, it feels like it's going back more towards the early games. I didn't really like the Joker games.
Yeah,
I felt like they're trying too hard to be Pokemon.
Yeah,
I'm like, it's not fucking Pokemon.
Oh yeah, totally. But yeah, so now for the next thing, the next part of the topic will be the NES helped save the video game industry in North America for the 1983 video game crash. Do you think it started a gaming renaissance, Zenspath?
I think in popularity for people like noticing video gaming, it did. Gaming itself, like we had a crash in the console market, PC gaming was still building up, and we're getting a lot of gems at that time that were kind of being ported to the NES or other areas. But in just the actual general zeitgeist for, kids in elementary school, middle school, getting back into gaming, the NES was what you would see. You would get that holy trinity of, Super Mario Brothers, Zelda, Metroid.
No.
And so many things would lead to conversations and things about that. And it helped that Nintendo kind of, it's a little draconian now for some of it, but they kind of put in some of those rules in place to limit how many games people could put out, which of course that led to how Ninja Turtles was by Ultra Games, not Konami, because they had their pseudonym name.
Yeah.
And they kind of put in that control, which helped kind of foster it back into popularity again. So, yeah, I do think we had kind of a renaissance at that point for creativity and things coming out. So, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Because what I remember was, I remember Ultra Games. I believe there was another company that did the same thing, but
there was a bunch that did that. It was not just one or two.
Yeah, it's just that Ultra Games was like the most well known of them.
Then there were some companies that like weren't officially licensed, like they just published themselves and stuff, and like flew under the radar of Nintendo too.
Yeah,
that
there's
is
a few
true.
of those that got around. Tengen being the biggest one.
Hmm.
Oh, Tengen, yeah, I don't like them. But
Really?
yeah, I have some issues.
Okay.
Yeah. um, oh boy, Wisdom Tree. Oh my god, I remember them like the with the religious games, like the Bible games, Bible adventures, and all those stuff. Yeah, like I've never played them myself, but I've seen videos of them, and yep,
Yeah,
I
I've
have
never
some
played
of
it,
them.
but
They're
I
terrible.
know the cartridge. Like,
yep,
Oh man, they are so bad. Because I always remember that like powder baby blue cartridge.
yeah.
my kids.
McKids, and yeah, Capcom was like partnering with US Gold for certain games, but
My kids was surprisingly good. Like I don't know why.
I haven't actually played it myself, but I've seen it. It looks pretty decent. Like it was trying to be like Super Mario Bros. 3, but
Yeah, I mean it was a competent platformer. It was not original at all, but it was solid.
yeah. But McPatches, do you think that the NES started a gaming renaissance back when it released?
Yeah, I think it really helped put like games into the home because like I wasn't alive at that time yet, but just from like my gaming history knowledge and stuff, I've seen where I know PC gaming was still popular, but PCs weren't really regularly in homes at the time.
Yeah.
Right.
So it like helped having more affordable option for people to get, and then kind of mainstreamed gaming. While it also, I feel like, kind of started helping kill arcades because why go to an arcade when you can play it at home? It didn't really hit the peak until like a couple gens later when like I feel like home gaming started actually hitting like similar capabilities of arcade machines. But
Yeah. I would probably say like it was around the time of like the Sega Saturn and the Sony PlayStation.
yeah,
That era was when arcade games were pretty much up to par with consoles. Because back then, there was a lot of hardware limitations. So what you saw with these games is what you were going to get, but you knew it was going to be better in the arcade. But NES was still pretty fine.
yeah, I think the final nail in the coffin. I mean, arcades are kind of having a comeback for like nostalgia and just they're fun to go to.
Yeah.
But they're not I don't think they're ever going to be as big again.
No.
And I think that the final like nail in the coffin was like the 360 PS3 era when online gaming started becoming a bigger thing.
Yeah.
Because then you're home playing games with your friends all the time. You didn't go to the arcades to like have those kind of like group activity and interact with people. You just play with random people online.
Because back during that time, you know, when the NES launched, arcades were still a huge popular thing, and that was Sega's moneymaker, even when their systems were still being built up. That's what they were developing their stuff for. So you would get those arcade games that you would want to go and play, and then you'd hope to see how their home conversion would be, generally one or two generations past to get decent ones. But the NES did have some really good conversions from more of the Atari generation stuff for like Galaga. They had somewhat decent versions of Pac-Man and things like that. So we were getting those ports while still making more original designs. The biggest renaissance, though, is it led to more development of games that were long-term play, not just sit down, play it, run around, get a score, and go.
Yeah.
You would, play The Legend of Zelda, and that was hours of gameplay that you'd come back to day after day to go through. Or even something like Super Mario Brothers, you could speed run it, but you'd have multiple levels that you'd be going through and kind of finding a path each time. And it just got longer and longer, which is I think one of the bigger additions that they brought in.
Yeah, we get the Nintendo Hard because they didn't want they wanted it to like essentially eat your quarters, so you couldn't rent it and beat it in like one sitting very easily. So then you'd generally want to buy it, or because they didn't make like anything off of rentals. They hated rentals.
Yeah. So. Like Nintendo actually went as far as actually suing Blockbuster at that time, and they lost.
Yeah.
They lost in some ways, but they did win in a few of them because they managed to get it with the copyright for reprinting the books. That's why a lot of the games wouldn't come with those, and they had to do it. So it was like, Nintendo may have lost the ability of stopping rentals, but they still kind of poked at him, going, no, we're going to make it a little bit worse for you at least.
Oh man, that just like unlocked the core memory. I remember the black and white printed out manuals from rental companies. I'm just like, oh man, I forgot about those.
Yeah.
Though I think I managed to get a hold of a couple with my collection as I was going along, and I'm like, oh, these are great. These terrible photocopies.
Despite the fact that Nintendo actually sued Blockbuster, later on down the road, they actually worked together with them for some events. Like, I know they did like a Star Fox event.
Thing for the Pokemon Snap, you could print out your pictures at Blockbuster.
Yeah, they did that. They had a Star Fox event. I think they had a Donkey Kong Country event as well. And also,
I'm pretty sure the Donkey Kong Country like competition cartridge is like one of the most expensive SNES cartridges. That specific.
Yeah,
Star Fox Super Weekend.
That's another one. Yeah,
Nintendo is saying in the chat.
Yeah.
I believe that would be Steven, one of my co-hosts.
Yep. There was also another one. There was also the Nintendo Power Fest 1994.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they used some Blockbuster locations for some of those events. It wasn't as big as the Nintendo World Championships in 1990, but they were, however, like what they used at the time for Super Nintendo. But in the case of the NES, Nintendo World Championships was something of an impact because, to me, I felt was like the culmination of the NES era, where they had this big event and they had qualifiers across the United States, and then Florida was where they held the World Championships in 1990. And they've only ever done two more World Championships since. One in 2015 during the Wii U era, like during E3 that time, and then in 2017 within the first year of the Nintendo Switch. The one in 2015 that took place in California, and the one in 2017 was in New York City, which I went to that to watch. I tried to qualify for the event, and I did not get in, but
you gave it your go.
Yeah, I did. I tried. But
you tried.
Yep, I tried. But in terms of impact, there was like so many things. There was a lot of merchandise that came out. Like there was the Mario ice cream bars, which are still made to this day. There were cartoons. Like at the time in the '89, there was Super Mario Bros. Super Show, which Monday through Thursdays it was Mario, and then Fridays you had Zelda. And Saturday mornings on NBC, we had Captain N, the Game Master.
Yes, I remember those.
Which I remember watching that. Yeah, like I did not like the way that they portrayed Mega Man in that show.
That little man was at least a 3-pack a day guy with that voice.
He sounded like a chain smoker.
He did, like at least 2 or 3 packs a day. That was
mega high. But that and then what they did to Simon Belmont. Oh my god. Like
when you do King Hippo more respect than you do Simon Belmont, you've done something wrong.
They have Metroid references, like they had Mother Brain, they had episodes dedicated to Metroid, but Samus wasn't in it. However,
Samus was in the comic book.
Yeah, she was in the comic book.
Yeah. A big part in it.
The comic book did not have Mega Man or Simon Belmont since those were not made by Nintendo. So Pit was in it, but he was known as Kid Icarus. And then Samus was in it. In fact, she was the rival to Princess Lana in regards to Kevin, like Captain N, in terms of being a love interest.
His affections.
Yes. And yeah, these cartoons were known for having like some weird covers of mainstream music from the time that they cannot use now. Yeah. Even though there was an episode of Super Mario Bros. 3 where they actually had Milli Vanilli on the show. And the funny thing about that was that episode aired just before the whole like lip syncing scandal actually took off.
I'm about to say they could just say it's keep the same music and just say it's not Milli Vanilli because they're not wrong.
Yeah.
Oh man, I saw a meme the other day about Milli Vanilli, and it was like Milli Vanilli seeing all the people getting famous on TikTok for lip singing. Like,
Oh yeah,
That'd be terrible.
yep,
The last thing, I know we've talked about this before in the previous show I was on with you, but we're talking about part of the gaming renaissance, not just for the games itself, but one of the biggest things they did in regards to that was the effect of Nintendo Power at that time.
yeah,
When that started, because, I remember, because I'm a little bit older than you guys, so I remember getting those issues, going to school with them, and we'd be flipping through and talking about, oh man, this game is coming out, or oh, take a look at this, here's how you get to there. And it was a very, very much a community thing, where whoever got a hold of the newest Nintendo Power would bring it in, and everybody would dig through it. And, I remember also stuff like with Metroid, it got to be to the point, there was a kid that lived right across the street from me named Jonathan DeGroat.
yeah.
And both of us got Metroid at the same time. And every day we would get on the bus and we would have the passcode to trade with each other to show where the other one's at, to prove how much further we've made it.
Yeah.
As we're building up and going through the game to see who can get through it first. And that went on forever.
Oh yeah.
But it was the most social part of it that it helped foster that really wasn't there outside of arcades themselves that I was aware of before the NES. So
yeah,
Yep.
I remember gaming magazines growing up and like just loving them, and like the ones I didn't get, being at the like grocery store and like sitting there in front of the magazines looking at the gaming magazines while my mom was like finishing up shopping. So,
yeah, they just leave us there. Be like, all right, just sit here and read this.
yeah.
Yeah.
Either that, or if you went to like Walmart or something, they put you in front of the kiosk and just okay. Like I was one of the kids. It was like,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
it hurts my back just thinking about it now.
Yeah, like for me, so in regards to the gaming renaissance, did Nintendo start that with the NES? Yes, but for home consoles, they did. Like,
Yeah.
sure, we still had arcades. Sure, we had home computers, but console market was practically dead in the United States until 1985. Toys R Us, so many different retailers were reluctant on wanting to bring it in because they were worried that this was just going to be, it's just a small fad that happens. Nope. Nintendo decided, see, yes, we got this video game system, but you got to check out this toy right here. It's called Robotic Operating Buddy, and with it, you can use it to actually program the video games as it's going along. So they practically manipulated all of these retailers to actually release these games, and they did it. Nintendo did it. Zenspath has it. Rob the Robot.
Well, the whole reason we have
My Rob.
Kirby's name is because, like, I think it was Universal tried to sue Nintendo over the Donkey Kong
Yeah.
name.
Yeah, the King Kong license.
Yeah, and they lost, and it was I believe it's not Jack Kirby. Jack Kirby's the comic book
Yeah,
guy. But
Jack
it was,
Kirby's I think it was John Kirby.
Yeah.
I think
Now,
so.
do you remember the funny reason that they won that lawsuit?
I just remember relearning
So
this recently, but it's like
Universal argued about having the King Kong license, and Nintendo proved that King Kong was in public domain when they made the remake in the mid '70s. So they kind of screwed themselves on that one.
it's awesome.
Yeah.
It was
It's funny
like
how many iconic things are around because of people screwing up copyright. Like the only reason we have like the modern zombie is because George Romero screwed up copyright on Night of the Living Dead.
Yep.
What's funny is that Nintendo and Universal would go on to work with each other for so many years, like starting with the Wizard, then afterwards, like they've done so many things together in time. Like now we got the Mario movie, which Universal Studios actually like distributed the movie because they also own Illumination. And
They made
also,
more money off that in Mario than I think they ever did off King Kong.
yep.
Oh yeah,
And then also the theme
movie
park,
did way better than I expected.
the theme park Super
was a fun
Nintendo
movie.
World. That's another
yeah.
one.
I go to that so bad.
Me too. I gotta
It's
go.
really small. Like
I don't care.
I gotta go.
I want to go. Like, I still want to go. I've just heard it's kind of small and the lines are really long.
Yeah.
Well, they're supposed to be building one down here in Florida, so
Yeah.
I'll be heading my butt down that way.
That will be in 2025, apparently, from what I've been hearing. So
I own
2025.
this house, I'll still be here. I
Yep.
will wait and drive down.
Well, they have one in Japan, don't they?
Yep. Japan was the
Of course
first.
they do.
Japan was the first one, and California was the second. Florida is going to be the third one.
Yeah, I feel like Nintendo is like on like this big spike of branching out right now.
Yep.
Like they're I don't want them to become the Disney of video games, even though they already kind of are, but like, it makes me a little worried that they're gonna like grow too powerful.
I'd rather them use the Disney model for how they're growing than when they were trying to use the Apple model to make everything, because I think that would be so much worse.
Yeah.
Valid.
Yeah. I will say though that they're kind of better than Disney in a lot of regards, but
Oh, for sure.
though the only worst things are basically like when they go and cease and desist stuff. But that's
Yeah, but they have to be careful with that because I know it sucks that we see fan projects get shut down, but if they're too loosey goosey with it, they can lose the rights to those IPs by letting people do too much without their permission. Like,
yeah.
The whole copyright thing is a confusing mess, but
and a lot of that's because of Disney.
Yeah, Disney was
Yeah.
the one that actually caused all that, and every other company is just doing their thing. But that's another topic for another day. But
Yeah.
thank Disney. Or as we said in the show last night, corporate greed.
yep. But anyway, but yes,
Transactions? What?
but yes, Nintendo did start the gaming renaissance for home consoles and then eventually handhelds with the Game Boy, which came out around the same, like, I think there was like another handheld that came out around the same time. That was the Atari Lynx, but they did not do that well compared to the Game Boy. The Game Boy was just powerful aside from the fact that they have like green and black graphics, which later black and white if you have the Game Boy Pocket, but it was powerful.
Tetris was a crazy popular game.
Yeah, it was powerful in the sense of like the popularity, like just Tetris, which if anyone has not seen the Tetris movie that's on Apple TV, I highly recommend it because that movie right there actually demonstrates sure, that's just like a loose adaptation, but it's definitely an interesting take on the history of Tetris. I highly recommend it.
There's a whole lawsuit in regards to that movie too, but that's a whole different topic.
Yes, but the thing about it is that Nintendo almost
Definitely
went.
Nintendo.
Nintendo almost went with Super Mario Land as the packing game for the Game Boy, but then they were told by, I think it was Hank Rogers, who was trying to get Tetris in North America at the time. He basically said, like, if you package Super Mario Land, then the Game Boy is for boys. But if you package Tetris with the Game Boy, then the Game Boy is for everyone. And at the time, that's what they went with. But now it's like pretty much anyone can play games. It doesn't matter who, what. Just everyone's
Well,
Go ahead.
a big reason that it like became a boys thing was just because like department stores were like figuring out where to put it, and they just decided let's put it with the boys stuff first, and like so it became marketed towards boys heavily. And like, I remember watching a whole documentary about like women in gaming and stuff, and like first early women, and yeah.
Well, I remember some of the stores back then, they didn't have dedicated electronics sections, so they they would just kind of package them in with the boys, for those at the time.
Yeah.
It wasn't until like probably the SNES era and stuff where they started like having more of a dedicated electronics area where they had like the wall of gaming, which now I know it's another topic, but now physical media is leaving a lot, and like I think Walmart announced that they're going to be getting rid of Xbox games in store,
And Best Buy, yeah, they're good.
Best Buy's getting rid of all their movies.
Yeah, I hate
It's a
it.
dark day.
I hate it.
Why?
Me too. I'm a strong. I like my streaming services and stuff. They're convenient, but I still prefer physical media because you have it, you own it.
We're
I was
like-
just talking Portlandia, one of my favorite sketch comedy shows. It's not on Netflix anymore, so you have to pay to watch it on anything else. And I'm like,
Well, it's like with the Tetris movie. I don't want to add another streaming service. That's why I never got the iTunes or Apple one they had.
yeah,
Apple TV. So unless that gets a physical release, I'm just not watching it. So
Yeah.
I want
Yeah.
to see it, but I need to wait for that.
Well, if anything, I don't have it, but if there's another way, I'll figure it out. But anyway, but I'm not going to talk about that here, though.
so
Anyway, so as far as the next part of the topic goes, how much did the NES shape your views on gaming over the years? We'll go with you, Patches, first.
I mean, it kicked off my gaming stuff. I think it was later gens that really honed my interests into more of a niche, because on the NES and Genesis days, I was super young, so I played whatever I could.
Yeah.
And but it was PlayStation era where I started getting heavy into JRPGs and story-based games.
Yeah.
But I definitely, looking back, I think it built up my tolerance for losing to games. And that's what kind of helped me get into the Souls-like games, is you're gonna lose, you're gonna die, but it's not that you're bad. Sometimes you did something dumb and that's what caused you to die, but the game is designed to beat you. It's the goal of the game to beat you. Your goal is to beat it. So I think that's one of the things. It made me embrace loss as a learning opportunity rather than feels bad.
Yep. What about you, Zenspath?
So the NES, the whole time period for that, like I said, that was the starting of all of my interest into video games. So from that, I would start seeing which games I liked and then learning about the development for those to see, how these games were made, going through with the Nintendo Power stuff, seeing how things were ported and seeing how things were imported from other countries to kind of see how that happened. And that made me understand more of a world stage of, we've got stuff being developed in Japan or Europe that gets brought over and what they have to change for that. And of course, these are the early days of what I consider the console war, which started off with NES and Genesis, and then I think topped off at the Super Nintendo and Genesis. So of course you had a lot of comparisons of how, that system's got these games and this one's got that, and kind of dealing with that whole mess. It also started a long war with my cousin. So that ended up with a family issue because he had the Genesis, I had the NES, and it was an argument.
Yep.
But yeah, it's just, it got me interested in so many different types of games that I still play to this day. And things have expanded since then, but there are so many I will go back to till the day I die that I will play and love from that system, and it's just cemented the foundation of all of my gaming for life.
Yeah. So for me, the way that it shaped gaming for me was that it was where everything began. Sure, arcades were also there too, and I did play arcade games around that time, but NES was where I actually started. From playing Mario, and then I went to playing Donkey Kong, shifting to other games different genres. I played World Class Track Meet on the NES with the power pad. I've played Contra. I've played Double Dribble. I played some of the Ninja Turtle games on the NES. I've played another game that I remember. There was this one game I remember playing. There was a submarine game. It was published by Ultra. I think it was called Silent Service.
It was Silent Service. I have that one, actually. I remember that one.
I have it because my uncle gave it to me, and it was all right. It was a decent game. I wouldn't mind actually playing that on stream at some point if I were to do random NES games, but for me, just playing the Mega Man games really did shape me. Though the one thing I kind of wish that I've learned the difference of like much earlier was knowing that not all games were bad, but not all games were good, because there were some really bad games that I play on the NES, like that Muppet game and Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Karate Kid was more of a mediocre at best game.
Back to the Future.
Did not play that game, but I've seen that, and oof.
I got roped into that one. I was like, I love this movie. Oh, I hate this game.
Yeah, there was a Superman NES game, but it was kind of mediocre. It was not terrible, but it was kind of a mediocre at best game.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the comic book games were like okay on the NES.
There were some
and then
good
the next
Batmans.
gen is when they started to actually get kind of decent.
Yeah. Let's see, but it shaped me because it got me into playing really good games, and it made me want to keep playing video games, even going into different consoles, whether it's from Nintendo or from other companies like Sega, Sony, or Microsoft. I have not owned a single console from Atari or from any other company. It's only ever Nintendo, Sega, Microsoft, and Sony. That's it. But without the NES, I don't know how my views would be in regards to gaming. Like, either I might not have been playing video games at all, or I might have been getting into the whole gaming thing differently. But I'm glad that I got into it when I did.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, it was all thanks. It was all thanks to my older brother, who brought the NES for us to play, and I'm just happy for that. And now I have a question for you guys. Did you watch the movie The Wizard?
Oh yeah.
I have seen it. I didn't see it in theaters. I wasn't able to go do that, sadly, but I remember all the hype around it.
Yeah,
I wondered how they knew about Super Mario 3 before we did.
Yeah.
It was the first Nintendo Direct.
Pretty much. When you think about it, it was the first Nintendo Direct because...
Well, I remember learning the secrets about the warp pipes because of that movie.
Yep. Because I remember first watching that movie when... Because it was like in 1999, Nickelodeon was just showing off random movies, and then they ended up getting to The Wizard. That was one of the movies I remember watching. Granted, they toned a few things down because there was some language in the movie, despite the fact that this was a family movie. There was some language.
It was PG, wasn't it?
It was PG at the time.
Yeah.
Even though at the time we also had PG-13, but
I think it was still new, but yeah.
But it's like the plot. I don't mind the plot; it's fine, but that's not why you're watching the movie. Like, the plot is basically like, it's kind of coming of age because you have a kid who, ever since his twin sister died, he just hasn't been the same. He was just basically been tending to himself, and his older and with the oldest brother, just he does feel guilty about like not being there to help save the sister when he had the chance, and he's basically been blamed for it. So then you have like the other older brother, like the middle brother, played by Fred Savage. So the two of them would go on that adventure, and then the rest is history. Like they would go play video games all over different states until they actually got to California. They participated in that. Then the kid got participated in the tournament, won. But the main highlight is seeing the games. Like, just is one of those like spot the game that you see, like Double Dragon, 50,000 points. I've seen so many different games that were shown on there. So Metroid, Mega Man 2, Mario 1, Mario 2, and of course they showed off Mario 3. But
yeah, just Power Glove. I remember that.
Yeah, Power Glove.
I remember they made that bully kid, like, he made the Power Glove look like the coolest thing ever.
He was playing Rad Racer, Which the funny thing is, in North America, Rad Racer is the very first game to be released here from Square, because Square has been around for a couple of years, but at the time they didn't have an American branch. So in North America, Rad Racer was published by Nintendo, and the original name of the game was Highway Star, but they had to change it over here because of the band Deep Purple asked them to change it. So they changed it to Rad Racer.
I think that's the better name, honestly. Rad Racer is just such an iconic name.
It was more or less like Square's Outrun clone, because at the time Square was trying to figure out what they wanted to do before they eventually made Final Fantasy.
But it's such an 80s name. It's the Rad Racer.
It was a product of its time. Bring it back, Square, please. Bring it back. And Tobey Maguire did make a cameo in The Wizard. He did.
Oh, yeah.
But he was wearing like a pink shirt. He was just like a background character, like hanging out with like the bully / rival. And
I think
yeah,
Elijah Wood is in Back to the Future, isn't he?
Yeah.
One of the arcade kids.
You use your hands? That's a baby's toy.
there was also, like, at the end, there was like this dinosaur, like one of those tourist traps, like they had this dinosaur that was used in Pee-wee's Big Adventure. They had that in this movie too. And
Paul Rudd, one of his first film things, I believe, was a Nintendo commercial.
Yeah, the Super Nintendo, which...
And he still looks the same, which is terrifying.
He
doesn't age.
Because he's a vampire.
He doesn't age. And then it's like, because that movie, what I remember about that movie, in addition to being a 90-minute commercial for NES, it was also a commercial for Universal Studios, because they were about to get ready to open up the Florida location within the next year. Like in 1990,
yeah.
So it was a commercial for NES as well as Universal Studios. So they snuck that part in there because Universal was the one that did this movie. The movie was fun. The movie was great.
What about the original Mario Bros. Movie with John Leguizamo as Luigi?
Okay, so
I haven't watched it since I was a kid, but I loved it when I was a kid. And the clips I've watched, I'm like, I feel like it's a fun take. It's a terrible Mario movie, but it's neat how they kind of made it this weird cyberpunk world and stuff.
So many memories.
If you took the names of the characters out of the equation and it became a completely different movie with like different names, different characters and all that, I'd say it would have been a pretty solid action flick. Would it have been the best action flick in the 90s? No. It was fun for what it was. But as a Mario movie, objectively speaking, and as a video game movie, it's not a good movie.
Yeah.
It has its moments.
Quotable lines, and that's about it.
It has its moments, but
that was released more during the Super Nintendo era because they used the Super Scope as a weapon.
They did.
Oh, right.
And Yoshi was in the movie as well.
Yep.
Well,
he was like actual T-Rex.
If you want to call him Yoshi, but yeah, but yeah, it's like Nintendo like pretty much paved the way for gaming in the landscape for consoles. For so many years, that's still going on to this very day. Nintendo with their 7th home console with the Switch, and as they're rumored to be releasing a new console next year, as of this recording, we'll see about that. But Nintendo pretty much left a lasting impact on a lot of people. And now it's like the NES. Sure, a lot of games do not hold up well, but still. They were fun. They were great.
I think there's a huge library that does hold up and has been carried forward over the generations.
Yeah.
But, like we've said, there was just tons of games on that console, because everybody was publishing like crazy, and so we have a lot of bad games that were pushed out, but the really really bad ones stick with us. But then also the really good games have been carried forward as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I think the biggest legacy with the NES is the longevity of how long that's been a viable piece of the market, and just how many people have started off with that. Like my kids growing up started off with the NES. We had other systems, but they really got into that one. And then now I see kids that are getting like the NES Classic when that came out, or playing stuff on Nintendo Switch Online with the NES, or the Virtual Console when that came out. Like it just every generation it seems to keep coming back either through ports or now through versions of Virtual Console and stuff. And more people get to play them, and it's like a classic movie. Like, it may be old, but kids are still going to watch Goonies and enjoy it, and kind of understand that. And I think that longevity will continue going. When I eventually have grandkids, they're going to be playing NES games.
Yeah.
Yep.
There will be some that they will still enjoy.
Yeah. So that's the thing. So many video game series started on the NES. Like, I mean, Mario did not start on NES. Well, at least the character, but but the Super Mario Brothers series did start here, and now we just got a new game, which is Mario Brothers Wonder. Just came out recently, so we have so many 2D Mario games that came out since. We had 4 on NES, one of which did not make it to the United States. So we got Super Mario Bros. 1, 2, 3, and then the other one was Lost Levels, which is Japan's Super Mario Bros. 2. And people need to remember that Nintendo actually had a disc system at the time. So Super Mario Bros. 2, or Lost Levels over here, was one of the games that was released on that. Zelda was another one. Zelda started on NES. Metroid started. Kid Icarus had its start here.
Final Fantasy, Dragon Quest,
Mega Man, Ninja Gaiden. There have been many others, but like those are like the big ones that people will always talk about.
If we didn't have Ninja Gaiden back then, we wouldn't have Neo today.
Yeah, we wouldn't. And Mega Man did put some eyeballs onto Capcom at the time. Not as much as when eventually like they would release Street Fighter 2, but they did get some attention that way. Like Punch-Out did start on NES. Tetris did not start on NES, it started on a home computer, but it did become a lot more popular here, like when the NES version came out, as well as the Game Boy version. We had so many series that started here, and many of which are still going to this day. Like Mario's still around, Zelda's still around, Metroid, Mega Man, Kirby's another one. Yes,
started on NES, but became really popular on that one.
Yep, and I don't remember what was the last Famicom game in Japan, but I know that the last NES game here from Nintendo was Wario's Woods.
Right.
The last game overall was actually like a Wisdom Tree game, Sunday Fun Day, in 1995. But the NES lasted a long time here. Like
the last licensed one was Adventure Island 4 for official licensed games.
Yeah.
Good old Google.
All right.
I was curious.
Yep. Yeah.
I was just like, technically, there's like new games that people have made,
but they're still coming out.
Like people would make like homebrew games, like but in terms of from like the official companies, but NES just lasted a long time, and just the impact it left was absolutely wonderful with how they handle everything. It was absolutely a good time.
Yeah. And while Nintendo's not perfect about it, they're, I think, one of the better companies about preservation for their older games. Like, the Switch, like, online services kind of sucks for it, but when you look at the 2 gens before it, they were really good about having a ton of their games.
Yeah.
I would do anything to bring Virtual Console back how they had it.
Though,
it was so good.
Though, I will say, Virtual Console does have pros and cons, and so does the Nintendo Switch Online, with how Nintendo has handled both. The sad thing is that like there's still a much better company with this than Sony. Sony pretty much is doing almost nothing with a lot of their classics, barely anything.
Yeah. They have recently said that they want to get more serious about it, and actually hired people and promoted people to be in the positions to do it. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
I want actions, not words.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. But that again, that's a different topic for a different day. So now we got the community questions. All right, so we're gonna start off with Dari Gamer. He has 2 questions. what has more of your favorite NES games, or what has more of your favorite games, NES or Famicom? Because there were some games on the Famicom that never made it outside of Japan.
I'd have to go with NES just because my Famicom knowledge was very limited until way later in life when I could get a hold of one.
Yeah.
And even then, there was such minimal differences between a lot of the games I like to play anyways that, you know, I treat them one as the same.
Mm-hmm.
NES for me as well, because like I didn't get into like Famicom stuff until much later with like emulation, where I could play translated copies of games and stuff. So like there's good games that I played on it, but NES is where I have the actual memories with it.
Yep. For me, NES.
Good question.
Yeah, NES. But that's a good question. Their second question is, what NES game do you think the world what NES game you think would benefit the most from a current gen remake?
Ooh. A current gen remake, huh? I'm trying to think of which ones I would do for that. I don't know, because a lot of them kind of already have had remakes.
Yeah.
Or it depends on how they are.
In them.
Yeah, I'm sitting here trying to figure that one out. Because we've already got new Blaster Masters.
Yeah.
We've already gotten different takes on Bomberman. I wouldn't mind
It's been
seeing
a long time since we've had a good Gauntlet game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but that one changes so much. We'd have to go back to the original one.
Yeah,
it'd be nice to get one of those though for an actual one. We're getting a new
Especially
Contra.
how many top-down games have become popular again on PC.
Yeah. We got a new Shadowgate not too long ago. So
yeah,
there goes that answer.
Yeah,
and we even got a new Double Dragon.
Say what?
We even got a new Double Dragon recently. Double Dragon Gaiden.
Oh, yeah, it's so good.
I
you guys ever
played
played
it.
Deja Vu?
Really good.
Yeah, Deja Vu.
We got beat 'em up.
It's kind of a point and click mystery game.
Yeah, never played Deja Vu.
Never played
It's not bad. I played it on the NES, but then it also got re-released on Game Boy Color with the first and the second one.
Oh wow!
Surprisingly well done. I wouldn't mind having that with modern graphics, just to kind of mess around with a good point and click game.
Mm-hmm.
If I had to pick one.
All right.
What about Burger Time? Oh, we did get a modern Burger Time game, didn't we?
Yeah,
I forgot about that. It just kind of came by and went.
Yeah, we got a couple of Burger Time variants over the years.
My mom loved that game, so that was one of the first games I had. It was like playing that game, and I tried to play it in the arcade recently because there's a newish arcade they opened up about a year ago here, and they have a Burger Time cabinet, and I played it. I was like, God, this game fucking sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you guys remember Iron Sword?
Yeah, that's one of the
Warriors.
Vaguely.
Yeah, I've never played them, but I've heard they were
a good remake.
Yeah. If I had to pick one, that I think could use a remake, probably Castlevania 2 Simon's Quest could benefit from one. They would probably make it more of like the Metroidvania style Castlevania games, but because they were trying to go for that, but I feel like a remake would go like 1 or 2 steps further to make it feel more like one. There's so many things that they could actually fix, like all the translations, all the hints could actually be useful. Actually scale the data night, everything they could fix. But I have one other game. The first NES Ninja Turtles game could definitely use a remake. They could just fix so many issues. They could add some stuff to it. Make it a much better game than what it actually is, and make it so that the swimming level isn't anywhere near as hard as it should be. But yeah,
we're getting a new Ninja Turtles game, the last round, based on the last Ronin.
They are. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
I'm really hyped for that.
Yeah. So next up is from Shad. He has 2 questions. The first one is, how do you feel about Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link?
Oh, I still consider that one the black sheep. Like I've tried over the years to get into it and enjoy it, but I always fall back on Zelda 1 and A Link to the Past. Like I kind of just divide and go between those and Link's Awakening. I've tried it and I've gotten further through it and I did enjoy what I played. I eventually, before I'm 50 in a couple of years, need to just sit down and finish it.
Yeah.
I think it was a really interesting attempt. Like, I haven't replayed it in a long time. I want to give it another shot because I think that it's probably better than I remember, really. And I've watched some people play it, and I'm like, this looks better. There's definitely some really BS things that happen, and I think that some of that's just like limitations of the time, like what they were trying to do. I think it was a really interesting attempt at something, like,
Yeah.
I wonder how different the Zelda series would be if it had been more successful. Like if they would have kept reiterating, like changing the formula like a lot every time. Because I mean,
Right.
up until somewhat recently, it was pretty much there's a problem. You go to the temples, you get whatever thing you need. Pretty much the Triforce, if not literally the Triforce, and then you solve the problem.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, the other thing with that, if you like Smash Brothers, you have this game to thank for most of your moveset.
Yep.
If you play Link in that game.
that's fair.
Indeed.
Yeah.
My thoughts on Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link. I know some people probably not going to like what I'm going to say, but I actually like it a lot more than Zelda 1. I do.
It was nice talking to you guys.
Hey, wait. No, but no, but I had a great time playing a lot of Zelda 2. Like Zelda 2 to me, I felt they were trying to go for something completely different, and I like the way that they handled it. They have like a different world that you can go through within Hyrule. It's apparently not the same Link, but apparently it's the same Zelda, but it's apparently a different Link. I have to actually look that up to see if that's true. But what I do know for sure is that they decided to add some platforming elements. They added some RPG elements to this with the level up system. But I will say, despite the fact that I enjoyed it, it's really hard, like especially towards the end, because when you die in any of the palaces, you go back to the very beginning. Granted, you still have everything with you, but you have to go back to the exact palace location if you want to continue that. With the exception of the final palace, the Great Palace, when you die in there, you go to the start of the Great Palace rather than the start of the game. So at least they did that. But yeah,
I have the music in my head. I'm like
Zelda 2. Yeah, the music's really good. I enjoyed the game.
That's another thing from the time period people don't remember. They take for granted now. Sequels back then, it was very more likely the sequel would be so different from the first game. They're not just going to be directly carried over. Stuff like Ninja Gaiden was not the norm, where you get a continuing series. Even Super Mario Brothers was so different.
Yeah.
So it took some getting used to.
Yeah.
It sparked my memory. You guys remember Crystallis? That was a great game.
Yes.
Yeah, I still gotta play Crystallis.
I need to replay it, but I played that one a lot when I was a kid.
Yep. Alright, so the next one that Shad asked was, what first-party NES games, like from Nintendo only, not from third parties, but just from Nintendo, do you feel aged the worst?
I got an answer.
I have one. I have two in particular. But I want to see what you guys have first.
Gyromite.
Okay.
I get what they were trying to do with it, but if you try and play that in any modern context, you're just like, I'm pressing buttons. What the hell?
Yeah.
This is terrible.
Just for Nintendo.
It is a game that's no good without its accessory, and it's a game of its time.
Yeah.
I'm looking up a list to jog my memory.
I've kept my list with me this whole time.
Smart.
Yep. Let's see. Oh god, Donkey Kong Jr. Math. I remember that one.
I do remember that one. Oh,
they were going to make more of those types of games, but it did not sell well, so they just stopped after that. So
yeah, I remember the whole run for a little while of education games that they would try and push on different systems when parents groups were wanting to have, these shouldn't be just mindless fun. They should be educational.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oof.
I remember cheating a lot in Duck Hunt once I realized I could just put the gun against the screen and kill everything.
Yeah.
My wife
Oh,
didn't
but
know that trick.
I
and
remember figuring out how to use the second controller to mess with the duck, and I didn't tell my little brother. So I
didn't
would
know
just
about
sit
that
there
until,
quietly
like,
and just
a few years
mess with
ago.
him.
Yeah.
Looking at a list, I don't think I really played a lot of these that were pushed out. Most of the ones I played were good games.
Yeah.
I vaguely remember Hogan's Alley. Every time I hear it, I think of this bar back home that's called Hogan's,
Yep.
and they have a copy of Hogan's Alley up on their shelf.
That's such a fun light gun game.
So
Yep.
I feel like most of the first party games that I like really experienced were the good games,
Yep.
or I blocked them out of my memory.
Now, I know that these are good games, but there's two in particular I feel don't hold up compared to its sequels.
Mm-hmm.
The original Legend of Zelda is one of them. I feel like A Link to the Past definitely took what that game had and evolved it. But the problem is that it's hard for me to play the original Zelda without using a guide. Like
Really?
I feel like I have to use a guide to play that game to get through it.
I can see
Can't
that.
say much. I have a giant painted poster that has the maps of Zelda 1 and 2 on it. Mm-hmm. I can just look at the wall. Oh, yeah, go here.
And
just go.
the other game, Metroid, because it doesn't have a map.
I think
Yeah.
Metroid was really supplanted by the Game Boy Advance Zero mission in such a good way.
Yes.
It's still a classic. I still have so many good memories playing it, but yeah, we had to draw maps out and try and figure all that stuff out at the time.
Yeah, it's
sure.
also the only Metroid game in which that you start with 30 health, regardless of like when you die, when you get like any of those energy tanks, and when you get the missiles, you will always start with 30 health, no matter where you end up.
You would very quickly learn where you could go and farm supplies really fast. I remember that. I would start, run to the spot, fill up, run to my objective, and then try not to die on the way and start it over again.
Like Zero Mission is definitely the better way to play the game. But yeah, those are my two games.
Those are good answers.
The next one is from Squire. Of Nintendo's lineage of hardware, which consoles do you feel like stand alongside the monumental legacy the NES established, but it's only just for Nintendo consoles, and that's excluding, like, we're not counting sales, just the lineage in terms of the games, because
Super Nintendo.
it's Super Nintendo easily. The GameCube is another one I would say.
I think the N64 it has its love, but I think it has a lot of hate too.
I only
Yeah,
have one answer in regards to compared, like, to how the NES was versus now, and it would have to be the Wii, because of its ability to just get so many people playing games in a different way at the time. It was kind of a mini revolution on its own that expanded gaming, just like the NES did when it first came out. Like, the Switch is popular. The Switch is amazingly, for a lot of its stuff, but the Wii felt like an actual revolution again, as it was.
Yeah,
just
so
as
many
the
people
NES
that
was.
didn't game
Yeah.
at least had a Wii.
Yeah, and that's the other big draw, that the Wii Remote was basically an NES controller on its side.
Yeah.
Like, that was a massive point to that, because they were going back to that simple design for gameplay. And I think when developers are limited with the tools they have, they can get more creative, and you tend to get better games from it, instead of people just saying, hey, I have all this extra horsepower, I'm just going to push this out and we'll just make it work.
yeah,
They have to be creative. And that was a big thing of the NES at the time.
Yeah. That's one of those things with those older gen consoles and stuff, is like the workarounds that they came up with. Like, even going into like the PS1 era and stuff, you look at the early 3D games, the way that they had to work around like the limitations to make things work. Like, you look at it now and those developers will talk about it like, yeah, we stitched that together with like safety pins, and paper clips, and gum.
Well, I mean, even with the NES when it first started, Super Mario Brothers was the most advanced game you could make without extra chips or changing the programming and things like that. And then you look at things like Kirby's Adventure at the end of the lifetime for what they could achieve, and you're like, wow, that is a massive evolution of gaming.
Yeah.
We've hit a somewhat of a peak in that regard with gaming in the last couple gens. Like, things get prettier, but it's like the small details and stuff get prettier, and then like I don't know if it's ever gonna have another massive leap like we went, because like NES era was a pretty big leap forward from the consoles before it, and then this SNES era was a big leap.
Yep.
And then 64 era was a big leap. Then PS2 eras where it started to kind of slow down in the leap, but it was still a big leap. And then the gen after that, it was like, yeah, we can do higher definition graphics, but
the
early
PS2
games
to
still kind of
PS3.
look. Yeah.
But my real answer is Switch. Because yes,
That's fair.
of course it's popular, but for me, the Nintendo Switch, I feel stands along the most other Nintendo platforms as among like the best, and like in terms of the lineage, because of the fact that you have like it was basically a comeback story from Nintendo, coming from the Wii U, which did not do well for Nintendo at all.
I loved it though.
Yeah, but and then it's like people were worried.
With the minority.
There were people who were worried that the Switch might either suffer the same fate or an even worse fate, and it actually didn't. And in fact, people kept doubting how well it was going to do, and it actually ended up like
the first couple of years before the games really started rolling out. I remember seeing people be like, "Yeah, the Switch is neat, but there's no games on it and stuff." I'm like, they'll come."
Like, look at my library right there.
Popular consoles.
I have like over 120 something games on the Switch physically, and like the Switch definitely stands along the NES and many other Nintendo consoles to me. I feel that it's earned its legacy. Sure, there's a lot of things about it that can be better, but for what it is and what is accomplished in terms of having a very stellar game library, I'd say that it stands among the best.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Agreed.
I'm really curious what they're going to do next, and if they're going to keep the hybrid system. I think they will, because it's been so popular.
I don't think Nintendo can ever go back off of that at this point. If they do, it's going to be a massive, massive mistake.
I'm surprised it hasn't. I was like, originally when it first started taking off, I was like, this is the future, like having a hybrid system.
Once you go hybrid, there's no turning back. They cannot turn back now.
I'm surprised I remember Microsoft aren't trying to emulate it more.
Yeah, it'll be a quick. I know we're talking about the NES quick tangent. I remember the night that the Switch came out. I got it at the midnight launch. Got home, we started playing it, and they were like, "Hey, we're hungry. Let's go to Waffle House." So I just pulled it out of the dock, took it with me, and I remember sitting there, and I had it on the table. I was playing Zelda while I'm just sitting there holding the Joy-Cons, and all the wait staff is like, "What the hell is that? How are you doing that?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's a home. It's a new portable. No, I can just take it home, plug it in. It's on the TV." And they're just all dumbfounded. And I'm like, "Yeah, this is changing things. That's something new."
Like while the Wii was a revolution, the Switch was an evolution.
Yeah,
and it's like, I'm going to have to feature what Nintendo and chat just said, because here's the thing. When you have a blackout, Nintendo Switch reminds you have something to pass the time in the dock by turning it on. Or if you can't do that, you could just take your Switch and you could just play it.
Yeah, no, like about a year ago, I had my power out for a couple days, and like my Switch was the lifesaver for keeping me entertained.
Yeah.
So we had the hurricane here. We lost power for quite a while, years back after it had first come out. We were playing the Switch, charging it off the generator and running it. So
yep. So now let's go back to the community questions. We got one from Sohn. What are your thoughts on NES modded games? Have you played any, and any favorites? I haven't really played that many of them, so I can't really comment on that one.
Yeah, the most modded that I've ever really messed with has been like English translations for an imported game.
Right.
I have games that were made, modern games, using the NES, or I've had ones like there was a game released on limited run called Golf, which was it was an actual runs on an NES, but it was a mini game inside of a Switch game, and they ended up making it its own game, and I played that. But I've seen a lot of the ones that are, people will modify. Like I know Metroid has tons of them. Mega Man people will make their own homebrew. Super Mario Brothers especially had a lot of those. I never really got into them, but I have seen them.
Yeah.
I haven't played many on the NES yet, but I know of quite a few that seem pretty fun. I think it's cool what you can do, like even like other games. My first heavy experience with Ocarina of Time, where I actually was trying to beat it, was with a multiplayer mod with a friend, and we broke the game a couple times. It was pretty fun. And then he got mad when I got a new computer and the save file got screwed up.
Oh no!
I've since gone and played through it, but not with my friend. He didn't want to come back. But yeah, I think that they're really cool what you can do, and it gives a longer lifespan to old games you love. Like I really like randomizers. I think they're a lot of fun.
Now, I just thought of a caveat. I was a big user of the Game Genie at the time, which would that be considered modding games? Because you could do some weird stuff.
Yeah, I mean it does mess with the code.
Yeah, I mean it's a code injector.
Yeah.
So,
did it almost get shut down by Nintendo because of that?
Did they what?
I think they almost got shut down by Nintendo because of it messing with the original game code.
Yeah, Nintendo lost that lawsuit, but they did go after them.
Yeah.
They did. All right. If we're gonna count Game Genie, even then I didn't really play NES Game Genie back in the day either.
Yeah, I didn't get into Game Genie until the Genesis. I had one for the NES, but I didn't really understand how to use it until the Genesis.
Yeah. Next one is from Destiny. What was the first NES game you ever bought? For me, I didn't even buy any games when I was a little kid. I had to wait till when I was older, and even then, it was a completely different generation. So the NES was like long gone. That said, if we're gonna count the first NES game that I bought as a retro console, I have to really think about that one. It's probably rebuying Super Mario Brothers / Duck Hunt for a very small price because I was on the kick of rebuying some games I used to own. But if I had to go with the first one that my parents got for me, because while my older brother got us Super Mario Brothers / Duck Hunt, I think the one my parents bought, I actually don't remember. Even then, I don't remember. What do you guys got?
Yeah. I don't think I remember because I like you. I was pretty young.
Yeah.
So a lot of it was hand me down, and I had a lot of games that were handed to me. I vaguely remember going to Walmart and Shopko before they moved on from that gen completely and buying games off the shelf, but I don't clearly remember what games it was.
So obviously, I said that my parents bought me my original NES with the Super Mario Brothers Duck Hunt pack. And then, later on, they would get me a game each year for Christmas. I had ones that I would ask for, including Spy vs. Spy, which I did regret that year. Yeah, great game, but I beat it the same day and was like, what have I done? But the first one I remember actually saving up and buying with my own money would have been Kirby's Adventure later in the NES life, because I wanted to get that one so my brother and I could play it, because it seemed like something I thought he would like, and I ended up loving as well. I think that's the one I remember paying for with my own cash as a kid. So,
yeah. But yeah, again, I can't really answer this question because in terms of what my parents got me. But yeah, I'm gonna go with Super Mario Brothers / Duck Hunt for myself because that's more of just rebuying games I used to own. But yeah, The next question comes from the Epic Man. You guys ever wanted to try those NES accessories like the NES Advantage or the piano? I actually had an NES Advantage when I was a kid. I do, however, want to see if I can buy a new one. But the piano, I wouldn't mind just giving it a go, but I wouldn't really own one, but I wouldn't mind just trying it at like an event or something, or if someone I know has it. But there is one in which I do want to try, even if I don't buy it for myself. I do want to try it. The Rolling Rocker. Like, so,
A lot of weird.
so the Rolling Rocker is basically, you're on the NES, like there's like this peripheral, you have to stand on top of it, and that's how you play the game.
Yes.
So I'm kind of curious. It's more of a morbid curiosity at best. And also, I have tried out the Power Glove. I kind of want to get myself one to keep it as it is, and the other one to turn it into the NES Infinity Gauntlet. Like, so if Thanos had one, basically that.
Yeah.
What do you guys have?
I really want like a Power Glove just for the like nostalgic element of it. But I have all the weird accessories. I don't know any I would really want to own because it'll just take up space. But there's so many weird ones. I remember watching Pink Gorilla's stream, and they sold on stream the fitness bike that paired up with it, the NES. And I didn't know that existed before then. There's so many weird ones. There's like a step pad, I remember. Like, oh man.
I still have a lot of the original NES accessories that I got over the years. I have the NES Advantage. I have the NES Max, which I'm telling you now, don't ever get it. It's crap. Of course, I've got all the different versions of the Zapper. I've got the Power Pad. I have the Power Glove, which still works. I'm sure I have some other weird ones I found over the years. But like the NES Advantage, I always loved using that one, especially when playing like shooters. Just having that arcade stick. And of course, all of us remember it being broken out in Ghostbusters 2 to, run the Statue of Liberty.
Oh, wow.
I remember having the joystick and playing, I think, Blaster Master with it.
Oh, nice. Because I always remembered it had the two NES connections at the end. So you could plug it in and you have a little switch on the top to switch between player 1 and player 2.
Yeah. Let's see. The next one is from Mr. Ben. Are there any modern NES demakes, like modern games revised or remade to fit into an NES 8-bit aesthetic that you've played? And if so, which ones would you recommend? I have not played any of them.
I haven't played any, but I know a friend played the Final Fantasy VII one and really liked it, and I'd like to play it. I think they have some patches too that fixed a couple of issues that they ran into.
Yeah.
If you play it on an emulator, but you can put it on a cartridge and play it.
Okay. Zen?
Yeah, I haven't really played any of the demakes that much. Like I said, Galf will be the closest thing I can think of because it's a modern game, pixelated game, and it was a mini game in it that they made into an actual game. So that's kind of a weird roundabout answer.
Yeah.
There's a couple I'd like to try, but they usually seem pretty rough.
Yeah.
I
So
know the big demake I really want to play that I haven't gotten to isn't for NES, but I want to play the PlayStation X, the PSX Bloodborne.
Oh yeah, that one. Yeah.
Someone played Halo on 2600. I was like, how did you?
Yeah.
Or like Doom on whatever platform you can think of.
Oh yeah, Doom's on everything.
Even on a toaster, even on a one of the Texas Instruments calculators, you could put
They
it.
had it running on a pregnancy test.
Yep.
I kid you not.
Yeah, it's such a small file size.
You're having
they
a
can run it on, like,
demon.
everything.
That is absolutely wild, and I love it. But yeah.
May it never end.
So next one comes from Maverick. Any peripherals you enjoy the most? Any a Zapper? Any and the NES Advantage? Those are the ones. Those are the ones that I enjoy the most.
Oh, go ahead.
NES Zapper, because I could just play Duck Hunt all the time with it. But NES Advantage, it kind of makes you feel like if you're in the arcade, at home.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the zapper, I would sit there, and if I'm just kind of chilling out, and I'll click the gun, I click the trigger, because that click and then the vibration of the spring is just, that sound lives in my brain.
Yeah.
And it was always such a, like, I would always remember all the times of playing that between Duck Hunt, Hogan's Alley, Gotcha, all those games.
Yeah, I'd say the Zapper, because I liked playing a lot of the shooter games and stuff back then too.
I mean, the Zapper is the main reason I have a CRT set up in my room, just so I can play light gun games.
Yeah, that's why I got a CRT, but I haven't set it up. It's sitting in my garage.
There's like a new type of CRT that was branded by Sony that I kind of want to get. It's like one of those mini monitors. I might use that for some of the retro games, including NES.
Oh man, there's some I can't remember who's doing it, but there's some company that made something that you can use light guns with on modern TVs. But I can't remember.
Yeah, it works with
message you when I
PC
remember.
the way it does that, but it doesn't, you can't plug it into an NES and use it.
I didn't know if you would be able to hook it up through something to play the old light gun games.
You could, and I'm not
I know
going to go into the minutia, but they did a test where they could play Duck Hunt on a modern TV, but you have to completely recode the game to work with the timing of the refresh, and it was a whole thing.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I do miss light gun games.
Yep. So, Dragon asks, what do you think about the term NES hard or Nintendo hard? And do you think many devs purposefully developed their games to be tough to go through, or was it simply a consequence of the archaic limitations that they had to design around?
It was definitely to challenge the rental companies. They're on document pushing it, pushing companies to make their games harder so that you couldn't beat them as easy. And you can see where the Japanese copy of a game, especially on the SNES, was easier.
Yeah,
because they didn't have as many limitations to force it to be harder.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely a lot of it was the rental market, like you said, affecting that. I take a little bit of issue with the archaic term for that, because at the time, that was the best tools they had for a lot of the stuff you could do with it. But you still had that majority arcade game design style, so it was meant to challenge you to go for that high score. So they were very, unforgiving, and that was also how they would kind of lengthen the time you could play. If they just made it really difficult and you kept dying, you'd come back and try again, and it was memorization for a lot of stuff.
That's how you see the speed runs for a lot of those games are a couple minutes.
Yeah, once you learn the patterns, that's when you would really beat a game. When I could beat Super Mario Brothers in right around 5 minutes, that was just because I played it so much. And I don't even know what the world record is now. It's ridiculously short.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, totally. Let's see. Honestly, for NES hard, if I had to say anything, yes, of course. So I agree. I agree with the fact that a lot of it was due to combating rentals, or combating people being able to beat the game within a day or a weekend or something. But I also think that some of it was due to hardware limitations, so they had to use with what they had. And there were a lot of games that were a lot more ambitious for what the Nintendo Entertainment System could really handle at the time, especially games that came out much later in the life cycle. Because when you actually compare some of these games from because remember, the Famicom started in '83, so those early games, in comparison to games from 1994, 95, you could see a major difference. And the fact that all of it was on the same console speaks volumes on how much the NES pretty much pushed to its major limits over the years.
Like I said, it was originally designed at its max to play Super Mario Brothers.
Yeah.
And then you look at Mario 3, and it's almost a pre-Super Nintendo game.
Yep.
Yeah.
but yeah, that was that. And we got one last question. It's from Derek DeBroni. So he asks, what unlicensed games have you owned back then? To be honest, none. I'd never even owned a Tenga game. I've never owned an unlicensed game. It was everything that I've owned was licensed by Nintendo.
I think I had some Tengen games because I remember the weird cartridges, but yeah, it's been a long time since those have been gone.
Yeah, I had a couple of the unlicensed games, especially there was the Quattro Adventure from Aladdin, which you actually had the back of the cartridges open, and you could go in and change the jumpers to switch which game you were playing or how the settings were inside of it. And they had an interesting way they got around the lockout chip for that. I had a couple of the Tengen games. I think I had like Gauntlet. I think there was a baseball game. I never got Tetris. I tried so hard to find because that was a better Tetris when that one came out. But yeah, like they made the circulation over time. I'd find them and be like, well, that looks weird. I want to try it out.
All right. Now I have one last question before we go.
Awesome.
So, out of every game on the NES, that you guys have played, was there a game that you wish you played on the NES when you were a kid?
I wish I would have gotten more into Mega Man as a kid because I didn't have them, and I played them more recently, and they're fun games. And like, there's definitely the Nintendo hard element, which I came from like limitations of the time.
Yeah,
where like level design was just a little floppy at times and make me rage. But I wish I would have gotten more into them as a kid and actually had an opportunity to play them more.
Yeah.
The ones that I enjoyed later in life that I kind of wish I would have played as a kid is probably like Shadowgate, because I didn't pick that one up until later, and the original Dragon Warrior. Like, I didn't get that. I didn't have the Nintendo Power subscription at that time, so I didn't get that game. I would have liked to have given it a shot. I might have even gotten a little more interested in RPGs if I had.
Yeah,
that's fair. I didn't get into Final Fantasy and stuff until PlayStation 1, when I was a little bit older, could actually read and stuff.
Right.
Yep. I'm gonna come up with two answers.
Okay.
The first one is actually Castlevania. I kind of wish that I got into it during the NES era. I did not get into Castlevania until when the Wii came out and Super Castlevania 4 was released on Virtual Console. It was actually the first Castlevania game to release on Virtual Console on Christmas Day that year. And my cousin suggested me to play that game, because they released a couple of games, and he suggested me to play that one. I did, and I love it. It's my first Castlevania game, and it's my favorite one. But I did play the NES one, and that one was hard. Like, the first NES Castlevania game is ridiculously hard, but stage 5 was like the absolute worst, or at least so I thought, until I got to stage 6. And then the fight against Dracula wasn't so bad, but it was hard enough to really just make me want to pull whatever hair that's left on my head out of it. So Castlevania is one. And the other is DuckTales. I kind of wish I had that game as a kid. Yeah,
that would have been great.
Because when I had some bad licensed games, I kind of wish that I had a good licensed game. So DuckTales would be the other one.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So that's going to wrap things up. So before we go, so Zenspath, where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Zenspath. I'm not going to call it X. It's just going to be Twitter. To heck with that. And then, of course, whenever I do stream, twitch.tv/Zenspath. You can find the video version of our podcast at youtube.com/ZenspathCom. And then obviously we have the Zenspath Entertainment Network, which is our audio podcast. You can find that pretty much anywhere you download your shows.
All right, very good. And McPatches, where can we find you?
I'm on a lot of social media, but primarily Twitter is where I'm most active, and then on Twitch is where my main content lives. So I stream 4 days a week. I'm going to be playing a bunch of like the NES era like games on the Monday before Halloween for my Halloween party.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm planning on playing some Castlevania, playing Nightmare on Elm Street. Like I have a list of games I'm gonna get together to play. So yeah, if you guys are interested in that, I'll be around the day before Halloween.
All right, that sounds good. All right. So for me, like obviously you could find me anywhere on social media at ShellshockPrime. I'm on everything. I'm on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, Blue Sky, Threads. I'm on pretty much any platform you could think of that is active. And I pretty much do these shows usually on Sundays, but next week I'm actually not going to do a show on Sunday. I'm actually going to do it on a Saturday for once because Sunday I'll be busy, but Saturday will be the second Halloween episode. So hopefully people can tune in. That'll be Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern. I'm finalizing the guests, but stay tuned to see who will be on that. But yeah. But that's going to do it. So thanks to everybody that came through. That's the end of the show. So
Thanks for having me on.
remember,
Bye, guys.
take care. And now you are playing with power.